So good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome to this panel discussion on leadership in turbulent times. I think we all can relate to the times that we are in now, but let's speak about the hope and the good things also associated with it, and lot what we can all do during these times to make things better. I'll give a brief introduction of the firm that I represent. It's called People Business. We've been there for almost 15 years plus, and been focusing on people and leadership capability building in organizations and worked across industries. And also we started this program called the Great Manager Awards in partnership with Economic Times and TFI Management Institute. And that's been a torchbearer of managerial and leadership effectiveness in the country. So saying that how do we recognize companies with great managers and also leaders and managers in those companies that make it happen. So that's been the focus of the Great Manager Program. In terms of how we deliver, we also have a great team that work with People Business and also partnered with global organizations like BetterUp. BetterUp is the world's one of the largest coaching setup. University of Bocconi, Hofstede Insights. Hofstede, many of us know it's the organization culture and the national culture research organization, and the Kaufman organization, which works on the employee engagement part. So those gives us the bandwidth and also the research insights to deliver our solutions. In terms of the Great Manager Awards, it's the fifth edition that's going on, and that has we worked with more than 25 to 30,000 managers during this period. That gives us a lot of information about what makes great managers and great leaders. And this Great Manager series of these discussions is to enrich the data and also bring those qualitative insights from leaders who've been in the forefront of building leaders and also helping organizations to succeed. So today we have got a very distinguished panel. G.V. Ravishankar. G.V. Ravishankar, I know him from IIM Ahmedabad days, is a person whom we all respect for what he has achieved. He has recently won the ET Investor Award, the Startup Investor Award, the investor with the Midas touch, they have termed it. GV is a NIT Trichy pass out and then IIM Ahmedabad, and has worked with McKinsey before Sequoia Capital. He has made some great investments and supporting the startup ecosystem. Companies like Byju's that we all know, Wildcraft, and many more which he has taken to greater heights. So welcome GB to this discussion.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Emmy, I think people call him fondly Emmy. Emmy also, I know him for the past almost 15, 16 years. Being a veteran human resource leader, worked with many marquee companies like British Gas, Voltas, Volvo, I think a lot of companies that we respect, and he has built the capabilities in those organizations. Now he leads the leadership development and managerial skills development for the Tata Group at TMTC. So welcome, Emmanuel David. Sushant Therappan, I had the fortune to work with Sushant at Infosys. Sushant has, almost 2 decades of experience with Infosys itself. And somebody that we all looked up to, somebody who's done a lot at Infosys. And now he is supporting the chairman and the CEO in building leaders, or the current leaders and the future leaders for Infosys at Infosys Leadership Institute. He was also the human resource head for the Edgeworld, which is the product subsidiary at Infosys. So welcome, Sushant.
Thank you, Sandeep. Happy to be here.
My name is Sandeep Krishnan, and I work as a senior partner with People Business, been in the consulting field for almost a decade now. Worked with Infosys, IBM, and other organizations like EY. I come from a leadership background after doing my fellowship at IIM Ahmedabad. I also teach at IIM Ahmedabad and IIM Indore. And I've written a book called Making of a CEO, which is published by Penguin. So it's an interesting topic. I think I love this topic around leadership, but also the connection with the times that we are in, and also what business realities that we are facing at this moment. So this discussion is to enrich our understanding through mutual learning and the questions that the audience has. And thanks to all the participants who have joined for this discussion during um, taking their time out. Thank you so much. So the format of this discussion is we have some questions that we have curated based on some of the inputs from the participants and also the research during these times. And what we say is that things have changed, and some of the things have changed for good, some things are not so good. But what can we learn from these, and how can we prepare better? Yeah, I think this quote of Peter Drucker really fits in, because we need new wisdom, we need new ways of doing things. Yeah. So I'll start with this question to GV. Uh, GV, I mean, you've been working with a lot of founders who made it big, who have done really great stuff. You know what's going on in their minds. And also there have been reports about a lot of startups having a tough time during this time. But at the same time, there are ones who are really thriving and making things big during these times. So it's an interesting phenomenon that's going on. And what's the learning for us during this current scenario? What can the startup leaders do differently? What is your experience, GB?
Thank you, Sandeep, and it's great to be here. So with that, the last 5 or 6 months have been quite interesting, right? So when we went into March, and when we had the early signs of trouble brewing, nobody expected this to be something that was long term. Although at Sequoia, having the benefit of a multi-country operation, we are in China and the US, and so we started seeing some of these signals early. So we published something for the founders to kind of warn them of what could be a big, black swan event that was coming at us. And little did anybody anticipate that it will kind of be as bad as it we thought it could be. And so one of the things that we told our founders was, look, we have to embrace, we have to brace for impact, and you have to kind of change a few assumptions that you're making going into the situation versus how you started the year potentially in January or as the case may be, right? So people had made plans and they were working on a plan. So it was very clear that those plans were not going to be valid anymore. And like you rightly pointed out, there have been companies that have been hurt badly, and there have also been companies that have actually benefited really well, right? So we are seeing this both extremes of companies that, if you're in the travel business, tough luck, right? And if you're in the education business, ed tech business, for example, you're seeing benefits of that. So there has been this whole, the kind of equivalent of the have and have nots type situation that we have seen. But the one thing that I'd say is common, and to the extent that the way it's played out is also telling us how founders, can be, good at navigating these. I would say it's, what we like to call plasticity of the founders, right? And then what I mean by that is people are able to assess what's going on, absorb some of the changes around them and the advice that they're receiving, and then very quickly change their business models or their current scenarios to enable them to first survive through a difficult period like that, right? And that's the number one thing. You can figure out how to be better only if you kind of see through this tough phase and survive through this phase. And so that was the number one thing. And we saw a lot of our founders clearly focusing on the right things. For example, you'd have seen people cut costs. They were renegotiating rentals. Sometimes unfortunately have to, do headcount reductions or at least salary reductions. They put people on furlough. They all made lots of personal sacrifices. Founders and the senior teams all gave up compensation. So they did a lot to make sure that the businesses will survive through the crisis. And then once a few months passed where they understood what they were dealing with, then started saying how they navigate their businesses for long-term, sustenance as well as long-term, rewards, right? So for example, you'd have all seen Zomato, which kind of one of the very rare companies in the startup phase that actually publishes a lot of their data, right? And they kind of came out in July and said they were close to profitable, and they had dramatically reduced costs and improved their business to get to that place, right? So that's an example of people that were dealing with this issue of people stopped ordering from home, business, dropped by more than 50%. And despite that, they were able to find pockets of opportunity to correct their cost structure and get to a point where they feel they can sustain for a long period of time. On the other hand, we spoke about, you mentioned the company Wildcraft. Their business is dependent on a certain segment of the business is dependent on school children buying bags, or office goers buying bags, right? There are no offices, there's no school children going to schools. So they were facing a much kind of a harder predicament, and they came at it very differently. They saw a new opportunity in what was going on, right? And they are a business that's focused on equipping people for the outdoors. And they said, look, if the outdoor has become somewhat hard to navigate because people are worried about the virus and so on, can we equip people in a better way? And so they started making what they call respirators, which are, in common language, masks. But Wildcraft invested in research to say very quickly, how do we make high quality masks that are affordable, that can be washed and used multiple times, because they knew that this is going to be a requirement, right? Now, that did really well for them. And thanks to the ability to adapt to that new situation, they will probably actually grow by 100% this year over last year, which is not something that would have even normally happened, but for how they reacted to COVID. And there are others in EdTech and so on who all took the opportunity and said, look, how do I make good of this particular situation? So stepping back, I do really think the one takeaway for me is the ability, if people could make the changes and could be plastic and elastic in how they approach the problem and reconstruct their business, they can come out much stronger from an opportunity like this. And that's what we feel super good about, that founders have been able to do that. And at least for us, that is a huge validation of the fact that we have backed the right type of people.
So GV, I think that whole point about plasticity and making the changes as we go along, I think quickly making those changes, I think that's a good takeaway. And I think the examples that you gave were excellent. I think shows that, and we could all see that happening in front of our eyes. And Emmy, do you have any points on this? Because this looks at the positive part of it, right? The ones who have been able to adapt and quickly come up in these ambiguous situations. Any insights from your experience, Emmy, that you can provide?
I think GV has kind of covered most of the things. There is, of course, the whole value chain and where the consumption is happening. And I think we have to be cognizant of where the consumption is happening and then accordingly map the things. And you can't be, ignorant of that aspect, and how quickly one can adapt makes a difference. And that's what we've seen. And just about 2-3 days ago, I was reading the Wildcraft example, and I was quite amazed that a totally outdoor company could think of, reinventing. They're doing well as well. So there's something about organization, and when you spoke of startup leaders earlier, also I was thinking it is the values of the startup leaders and their own ethos. If you're agile, then perhaps there is an opportunity. And let me draw your attention to an article which HBR brought out by Chris Nichols and Shumat Chatterjee Hayden very early, when the pandemic started. They said, decide with speed over precision, right? Adapt boldly. The other thing is reliably deliver, which is what we've seen also in the month of May. Many people, even from Amazon, say how they're delivering, safe deliveries. The processes came into place. Even the grocers, some of them are doing well, are the ones who kind of, reliably delivering products. What amazes me when I go to my chemist or to my grocer down the road, and then I ask them, how are you guys? And, how's your health? How are things? And they're having multiple human contacts. Just think about it. And I see them week after week. In the last 6 months, I've been seeing them, and they've been also seeing me, which is a good thing. But they're doing something right, which is reliably delivered. So I think we need to get into that whole aspect, Sandeep, of self-discipline. There are bravados, and we've seen the impact of those brevados, but that doesn't pay. It's so simple, so serious. I think that's the thing. Finally, you know, that article talks about engage for impact. And we've seen aspects, and I've noticed also, even a small letter or in acknowledgement on a call to colleagues who are working hard makes a tremendous difference, you know. And so I think these are certain options, possibilities. Uh, and what is also interesting, and perhaps Ravi can throw some light also, I kind of checked in the last 6 months, there are about 16,000 new companies registered with the ROC itself. So in the face of the shrinkage of economy and lack of opportunity, someone somewhere says there's a possibility, right? Uh, so I think we have to admire their courage and their idea. So there is possibility, and that's what many people have come out with interesting ways. So one way, yes, it is a global situation, and the good news is it is equal for everyone. It's not that any economy, any geography has a head start over it. So we all are on the same line. This pandemic has been a great equalizer. So how quickly now you start from here is an important aspect. Actually, I'm reminded of a quotation I read almost about 30 years ago by then a millionaire called Jean-Paul Getty. He was supposedly a very wealthy man, and he was a millionaire. He was not a billionaire, but millionaire was big about 30 odd years ago. And he said, if you take the whole wealth of the world and distribute it equally to everybody in the world, right? In 24 hours, we would come back to the similar situation. Right. So I think it's more in the mind and how you take it. And I think that's the opportunity.
Yeah, I think GV and Amy, I think you brought out this point about the opportunities that come in, and also the adaptation, adaption, and also from a point of decisiveness. I think how do we really? I mean, when I was researching for my book on making of a CEO, one of the things that came out really different was the decisive CEOs. The ones who have been successful are decisive, even at the cost of making a wrong decision. So sometimes at these times we might have to take decisions which matter and make it happen. I think that's the key that might differentiate some of those founders and CEOs at this point in time. Thank you for that. I think we'll go to the next question around the future of work. When you look at the look at the world, how we work, I think that has been there has been a tremendous change in the way in which you're working in many of the organizations, where I mean, starting with something like a work from home has not been accepted, but it has been widely accepted by many people right now. I mean, the point that most of us are now sitting at home and doing this webinar itself is a sea change. The learning has gone digital. There is huge change which is happening in terms of the way in which work, how the companies are going to deliver their solutions to the customers. Everything is changing, right? And Sushant, I mean, you work with Infosys, which is an organization that quickly adapts, and you've seen this being discussed. I mean, future of work has been discussed in the literature for the last decade or so, but suddenly we see that happening in front of us. So what is your thoughts on this? How is it evolving, and what do you see in the possible future impact on any employee or leaders who are working with those team members?
Sure, Sandeep. So let me try and answer this in two ways. One is let's quickly contextualize the various trends, ones that were there before the pandemic, and then what the pandemic brought to the fore. And then I'll share what we are doing within our organization in terms of trying to adapt to this. So before the pandemic, globalization, the changing nature of demographics, technology advances, increasing regulation, these were all there, right? And the pandemic perhaps has amplified and accelerated some of these. The other key piece that was already in the works was this changeover from STEM to STEAM. And STEM, as you know, is science, technology, engineering, math. The A in the STEAM is the arts, the liberal arts part of it, right? Humanities, drama, music. And it's not something new. If you really look at it, arts and science have coexisted. That's why you had a Da Vinci or a Michelangelo show that in their works. But in today's world, it becomes very, very important. Let me give you a very contemporary example. I don't know how many of you know, nanotechnology, biomedical engineering, and design, jewelry design are coming together with new methods of delivering insulin for diabetic patients through jewelry, artistic jewelry. Now, can you imagine that? So you can see where art and science come together, and it becomes an experience in itself. The entire design studios, experience studios, crafting customer experience or consumer experience is another piece where this team part comes in. But what the pandemic has brought to the fore is the fact that, the paradigm that we get to hear, the workforce, workplace. Simply put, you have an opportunity for global talent access. You have an opportunity to look at different employment models, working models. The entire way in which you look at engagement, collaboration, productivity, all of this changes. And all of this has to be through digital platform tools, and processes and policies. So the way we decided to go about this is to say, let's pick some big rocks and focus. The first one that we decided to take a look at is this entire concept of alternate talent pools and talent fungibility. So when you're looking at alternate talent pools, it's the global access. You can, and with regulation permitting, and I'm sure regulation will find a way in harmonizing itself, you can now access global talent. And that is something that is going to really define the new normal in a very significant way. Second, you will also have an access to alternate talent pool, because think of your part-time workers and shift workers. A lot of the clients in the developed world would like people on their shifts. And today, with working from home, you can make them available. For a lot of folks, you look at your diversity and inclusion, focus areas. A lot of women workers are now available to you, and they are not bound by region or country, right? So that whole place opens up. While this is opening up, you also have to look at the employee personas, because you'll have a full-time worker, you'll have a 100% remote worker, and you'll have people who will come in and go. Now, how are you going to engage them? And that's another piece, and I'll come to that. The other element is talent fungibility. You already have headcount sitting in organizations. How are you going to repurpose and reskill them? And how are you going to make them productive? So there is going to be a lot of gig assignment and gig work that's going to happen. That's going to be very key. And you also are going to want to tap that from the external hiring perspective as well. So alternate talent pools, talent fungibility is one key area that we are focused on. The second, which is related, is job design and work redesign. So when I'm talking about job redesign, when you're looking at shifting work to, let's say, 100% remote workers, you have to really assess, are these people ready? Are the jobs ready to be shipped for virtual work? Right? So there is an entire piece of our entire job evaluation process that has to go through, because in terms of work, the culture, the workflow, I mean, as some part of it, the workflow may need that you may need to be sitting physically in office. There is a certain collaborative capital that is important, or there are certain skills that you need to bring to bear. This is something that needs to get assessed. The second is the entire work design part. How are you going to delayer? Right? We have a lot of folks, we have a lot of managerial layer, middle manager layer. I think that's the layer that's going to get questioned quite a bit, because unless you are able to bring individual productivity or a significant productivity to bear through knowledge and skill that you bring, you're just going to be seen as an aggregator, and you're going to get replaced. Specialization is going to become very key. The way you're going to look at hiring is that you're not going to only hire for the current skill. You're going to look also at, say, can I use this individual in another situation? Should I look at wanting to skill? Early on at Infosys, we started developing people on more than one technology, such that we are able to leverage them. So that's going to be another piece. So alternate talent pools, talent fungibility, work design, job redesign, the way you look at spans. And I know there are a number of HR practitioners who are out here. How does this impact you? Your spans of control are going to change, because you're going to manage a remote workforce. So if you are managing 1:500 or 1:300, you're suddenly going to be told you're going to manage 1:2000. What does that mean? That means that there is a pressure on headcount, right? And all overhead functions are going to be relooked at significantly. So this will impact you, and you need to keep abreast of this. The third is learning and adaptability. The example that GV gave on Wildcraft is a fantastic example of how they have very quickly repurposed themselves, and they were able to do this. But the key around learning, a lot of people understand learning as taking an online course and saying, I've got a certificate and I'm ready. That's not going to be it at all. You are going to have to demonstrate that you can create an impact, that you're productive, that you can bring about change. That is going to be very significant. You're going to see job assessment, because job interviews are going to be virtual. I think job assessments are going to take on a very different scenario. You will have simulations, and you will have to crack those simulations. And you are not going to be able to do it if you've just taken, a course online. You really need to have understood and assimilated that learning. On an aside, since we are talking about future trends, I think the Google career certificates is a big, interesting development. As you know, Google announced career certificates, and they're saying it's a 6-month course. You go through the 6-month course. Even if you don't have a formal graduation degree or anything like that, you take their course, you are eligible to apply for median jobs with a median salary of $50,000, right? And they are actually putting this out as a pathway to jobs, and they are evangelizing this. If you step back and look at it and say, once large organizations get into education, you're going to see a very big paradigm shift out there. Because think of an organization like Google with the career certificates, with things like Google Meet, with their infrastructure. July of 2020, they have signed up with CBSE, and 22,000 schools they're looking at impacting. Facebook is already there. So big tech is getting into education, and education is going to get reinvented significantly. So in that context, learning and reskilling is going to be very, very key for us. So that's the third element. The other related element to that is that there is a very low shelf life of skills, and therefore you have to embrace lifelong learning and keep reinventing yourself. The fourth is engagement. As you know, there's quite a bit around it. I'm just going to speak to one key point: psychological safety of your distributed workforce, of your remote. People are going to lose their jobs, or there's going to be performance management exercises, and then these numbers are being put up. This will impact people, and people will wonder what's happening with them, and they don't have the comfort of talking to people as they had earlier. And therefore, there will be a significant focus that we will have to deal with in terms of psychological safety from an engagement perspective. Reinforcing values is going to be another key piece. You're going to onboard a lot of virtual workforce. How are you going to ensure that the culture, values are continued? So that's going to be another area that we have to look at, and we are focusing quite a bit on that. How are you going to manage aspirations of your key people? Because as you look at all of these, some of your best guys are going to get access. Because remember, it's not just that you have access, your competition has access as well. So how are you going to retain people? And from engagement, there's a new paradigm that was there, but I think has come to the fore, which is wellness. So physical wellness, safety, social wellness, and emotional wellness becomes very, very key, right? Some of the things, and everybody is doing this. You're looking at spending on ergonomics, helping you set up a home office. Some of the things we realize that we need to do is that we need to spend more time by making sure that this new virtual method of working doesn't consume you. Because a lot of people that I speak to tell me that, look, the boundaries are blurred. Earlier, when I would come home, I checked out of office, and there was a physicality to it. Now I'm always on. I'm on calls, even Saturday, Sunday is getting blurred. So across the board, you're seeing organizations put up new rules and saying, okay, these are our wellness days, or these are our fun days, or these are no meeting days, or these are no call days, and these are boundaries to be respected. And I think many of these will happen. In my own team, one of my team members actually started an initiative, and when she actually sent out the invite, she called it Buck Days. Said, guys, let's just do a Buck time. And we looked at it and said, sure, and we got on to the first one. And she had a very interesting question to ask us. She said, what's keeping you happy? And we would do this on a weekly basis. Just that question anchors you, and then you realize, and the rule that she laid out was that you can't talk shop. There's no talking work here at all. You can talk about all other things. But just doing that brings that amount of wellness quotient significantly. The sixth would be building the right culture. And that's the tougher one. Culture, as you know, the best and felt. So as long as you have a tailwind, that's great. But if you're going to face headwinds, you have a problem. So how are you really going to look at shaping this? The way we are doing it is we said, look, it's important to baseline what our current culture is. It's important to identify what are the markers for the future, and then look at what is the gap and then address it. So we are actually doing a diagnostic study at this point of time. And we are looking to identify what are the value adding, value creating behaviors culturally, and what are the value eroding behaviors. And there's a framework that we are using with an external partner organization, and we are hoping to address that. But while we are diagnosing that, one of the key areas we said we should focus on is collaboration. Right? So if you read Yuval Noah Harari's work on Sapiens, the history of humankind, there are two fundamental premises, right? He says what made Homo sapiens thrive is fundamentally imagination and cooperation support systems. Cooperation support systems are nothing but your ability to collaborate with one another and bring about value. So we are focusing on collaboration in a significant way. Interventions around that. Finally, to tie this all up, you have to have digital platforms, tools, and policies, efficiency tools, productivity tools, all of this, and be able to. Towards that, our focus is to become a sentient organization. So one that can understand what's happening, and we have this entire concept called we are a live enterprise. So where you sense, understand, and then take decision making, which is leveraging AI and data culture significantly. So those are 7 parameters. Just to summarize, alternate talent pools, talent fungibility is going to be key. Job design and work redesign, engagement, learning, and learnability in a significant way. Wellness, building the right culture, policies, tools, platforms. These are things that we would have to focus on to navigate.
I think Sushant, fantastic articulation. I think you have given the gist of the whole, the future of work, technology, work design, the employee engagement, all the different aspects, the culture of which we like to build and the process. I think you covered everything. But just a point on that. Maybe GV, you can answer it, because I see a background of Sequoia in your in your background. And so what about the organization identities? Because the distributed workforce, and you mentioned, Sushant, about even the global workforce that we're getting. How do we build organization identity in this? Because I've not met my team members for the last 5 months, but still we are working together. There are new people who are coming in. So all these things are like, very different things that are happening. And this is not the gig working, it's like the normal working, right? And organization identities matter. So how do we build that? What is your thought on that, GV?
Yeah, look, this is a tough one actually. Quite honestly, during the lockdown, we probably hired 15 plus people, right? And none of them have come to work. And the offices historically, for most of us, right, are set up in a way that it's just not a workplace alone, but it inspires you about what you're doing. And the way for us this works is, if you come to a Sequoia office, you enter. You probably see the logos of all the companies that we invested in one of the walls that talks about, the creative spirits, the ones that kind of broke rules and, did stuff. And then every conference room of ours has a logo of a company with its founding date and, if it got sold or went IPO, when it did, etc. And, so some of this, while it looks like just art or, wallpaper, but it's really something that keeps reminding you of messages that kind of tell you about your organization and so on. And in this environment, you're certainly missing some of that, right? Because people are sitting at home. So some of what we do with the backgrounds is to kind of remind people, about where we belong. And we made like 15, 20 such, and people rotate around within that, right? I mean, that's a simple example, but we are investing a lot more in communication than, when we were back in office, right? So we do a all hands meeting now across the entire, like we have 4 And it's a lot of fun when people get together, because we by design make it informal, but we also use the opportunity to bring people up to speed on what's going on across the company. So kind of a town hall type setup, allowing people to interact. We also have sub team meetings that are more frequent now, catch-ups. We invest a lot in one-on-ones, and a lot of this is to drive the sense of purpose, right? So, and that probably is the one word that for me captures it. If you have to have a distributed workforce, and if this is the future of how people will work, then allowing people to understand the purpose behind what they do is an important thing. And I wrote something about this, why purpose now is more than ever kind of the most important thing that people should focus on, and managers, all of us as leaders, should instill the sense of purpose with employees. That's because you don't have the other set of things that reinforce the reason for people to do what they do, the reason they come into work. Without an office, some of those aspects are missing, and so you'll have to find ways by which people can get a sense of purpose, and that is by reminding people of all the good things that their work is helping make. Like in our case, there are two things, right? One is the founders and the great work they do, and then there are our investors. The returns that we make go to people who are actually doing some good things with the money. So we take the opportunity to highlight some of this to our employees at every given thing. And as a firm, we signed up for something called ACT, which is Action Against COVID. It is an initiative that a bunch of investors, including ourselves, along with a bunch of founders, came together and put a 100 crore fund together to help give wings to some ideas around attacking COVID and working with the state governments and so on. So now that's an example of another purpose-driven thing that we said we will all sign up to, because we realized that, look, people are going to be working alone at homes, and there are really smart people and a lot of capabilities that we have around the table, and the country needs and the state governments need help from people like us. And so when we did this, and I personally work with the Tamil Nadu state government, my partner works with the Delhi government, and so on and so forth. So we are working with them to say, hey, here's how we can help. Here are some of the companies that can help. Here are some of the solutions that has worked in other states. Can we bring it to you, and so on. So all this, and we had a very wide participation across Sequoia, right? And so that gave a sense of immediate purpose on, look, there is a crisis and we are coming together to do something about it. So you find ways to engage your people and give them a sense that, look, what they're doing is not whatever 9 to 6 Excel sheet crunching or whatever else, but there is something beyond this, right? So I kind of go back to this example of I think this was in Munna by MBPS, one of the movies, that there's a janitor who's kind of cleaning the hospital floor. You can either think of him as he's cleaning the floor, or you can think of it as he's keeping people away from sickness, because he's actually cleaning the place and making the place such that you don't have the infections, right? So it's a very different approach of giving meaning to your work, right? And so to me, it's really just finding the meaning and purpose of what you're doing and making sure people realize that, recognize that keeps people together, at least at this time.
Yeah, I think thanks for those inputs. I think Sushant and Jivi, I think you brought together both parts of this. I mean, the work from home, I think we see a lot of technology, digitization platforms which are enabling that. But I think the more important part is what we spoke about, the purpose of how people work together, creating those identities around that, values around it, the culture that we need to build. I think this yin and yang, if it is able to bring together, I think that's where probably the future of work is going to be. And because it's not, I think we hear a lot of technology that is enabling it, or digitization, but it's beyond that. How do we really bring the purpose into it? I think thanks for this articulation. We go to the next part. I think I'll request Emmy to probably start with this this question. See, I think changes. I think the examples that GV said about the incremental innovation that probably Wildcraft Pop or Byju's that how they've done. The innovation has become a survival issue. I mean, even as a firm like People Business, we have changed considering the firm, which was 6 months back, and right now what we are, I think we're like 80% transformed. And that in a short period. If it was a normal pace, we would have taken a lot of time. But there is a huge transformation in the mindset, in terms of the what is offering to the customer. Everything has changed. Now, how can leaders drive this agenda? I mean, what is your experience? Because you've been working with leaders across, the Tata Group and many other places. There's a lot of wisdom, and I think you've been also doing a lot of learning sessions, even virtually as well. There are 100 odd learning sessions. There's a lot of wisdom that you've brought in. What is this whole thing about innovation, and how has that become a survival issue now?
I think it doesn't require too much of research to say that, and it is survival as such. You can see. Just consider a situation. We were chatting a little earlier with Sushant as well. Last year, at the Tata Management Training Center, less than about 5% of our programs were online. Or rather, we did some blended learning and self-paced learning, right? And when we're kind of seeing what is the percentage, is very minimal. And then we took pride in people coming to the facility and the great experience they had. And we were all tuned for that. And since April 9th, when we first started our webinar series, which you said the learning latitude, we said learning should be across all latitudes. And we've done 104 of them till today. But more importantly, it's not the number 104. What amazes me is my team who have actually adapted and who learned several things. Right? I myself have learned how to host certain things on an online medium. So you need to adapt, you need to innovate. That is the important thing. Consider a situation, a colleague of mine who was handling, the hospitality, food and beverage, now hosts some of our webinars, and he's very adept at it. And I think some of the skills he learned as managing the kitchen, he's bringing it here as well. So what Shusman was talking of, fungibility of skills, I think that's the situation. And I like this favorite picture, the image of the last fight in the Karate Kid of Jackie Chan and Jaden Smith, right? So it's a loose situation. It's a loose situation. His leg is injured, and from conventional wisdom, he's going to lose, right? And he takes that posture and he plays that move, which only you can play with what you have. The thing is, we have to use what we have. But if we focus on what we don't have, then we are going to let somebody else overtake us. And that is the whole idea of innovation. And I must tell you that we conventionally had people coming in and had long leadership programs. And my colleague, Nupur Malik, who's the group CHRO, challenged us in April. He said, no, why didn't you do it online? And that was before we knew that. We thought the pandemic, we thought that the lockdown will end in May 3rd. That was how the whole common wisdom was. He said, no, plan for it, do it, do an online one. Why don't you do that? And so with one of the universities in the US, whom we have a long-standing partnership, we told them we're going to do online. And there was this whole situation, how to do it, a lot of discussions. And tell you what, we delivered it from July 28th to August 21st, right? We had 50 people in the class. A lot of things, myths we had that, people will not stay there and they will be disengaged. That is one thing. And recently we concluded just last Friday, Sandeep, with another university. We had an engagement for one of the Tata companies. And the program began at 11 that morning and was closing at 8:30. And I was thinking by 8:30, 8:35, people will leave the room. That is night. They continued till 9:34, chatting with us. They said, so something has worked in terms of the engagement. And of course, we made it interesting, innovative. Whatever we had to do otherwise, on a physical setting, we recreated. So I think innovation is a key thing for survival, whatever we have, right? And so if you look at the whole value chain, some of us are lucky and very fortunate that we have the internet facilities and we have the opportunity to work from home. But many else of us don't have that. We have to actually physically either design or manufacture or distribute so that there's consumption and there's service. And this is where I think we need to have a little more empathy and innovation. Let me put these two things. For example, since the lockdown lifted in our country alone, we've had about 40 incidents wherein people, when they resumed work, there have been, loss of property damage or loss of life, which means something is missing out somewhere. There's an opportunity when you get back. What do we do? How do we do? Is an important aspect. So that survival part, because we've forgotten. I'm also a little grieved at the recent air crash as well. Whatever may be the reasons, right? But when you do not have repetitive practice, there's an opportunity that you might lose out. As they say, what you don't use, you will lose. And the 6 months is a situation, right? So here is an opportunity of leadership, and I'm grateful that many leaders in the Tata Group also believe in capability building, and they are investing on that. And because that's the only option, we can keep people employable. See, employment is one aspect of it, and the responsibility of being employable is both the individual and the organization, and more so today on the individual, which is why you see Byju's and others doing well. So I think we have to do it creatively so that people feel engaged, and instead of putting time, they are accountable for outcomes. So these are certain key aspects I would say leaders need to look at, and Sushant actually touched on it on the redesign of work and so on and so forth. Let me close with an example, a personal example. But 2-3 years ago, I went to meet a dentist because for one of my cap had come off from for the filling. So they looked at it and they said, we're going to extract the tooth. I was a little petrified, actually. I postponed it. They said, you need to take care, certain health parameters also are not okay for you. So we'll have to check all those things. And then 6 months ago, I went and met a dentist whom I know in another city. Then I said, see, I trusted him to extract my tooth. I said, can you extract? He said, no, let me check it out. Took an x-ray. And then he said, fine, you don't need to extract it. Then he took a mold. I'm telling you, it's happening in real time. In 5 minutes after my meeting, took a mold, and then he chatted with me for a while. And in a few minutes, that mold was made into a plaster of Paris cast. And while I was still sitting there, one person came and picked up that plaster of Paris cast. I said, so are you going to make a new cap? He said, yeah. And I said, should I come back after 2-3 days? That's the conventional wisdom. He said, no, come back tomorrow evening. I said, yeah. So I went back the next day. I didn't connect this mold going off with someone else. So then he fixed it. When I went back the next day, he said, fine. Then I said, how many more sittings? Because I remember from previous experience that it takes a lot of time. And he fitted it, it fit well, it's still working well. Then I asked him, how did you do this? He said, I took these images, the mold, went to a lab. They made a digital image of it. And, it was digitally cut, the cap for you. Right? It was digitally cut for you. And therefore, we were able to actually fit it perfectly. Otherwise, earlier it takes time. Now here, what Sushant is saying, here's digital technology, AI related things, and fantastic dentistry coming together. Earlier, this man used to do it himself, and the cycle time is cut down, and he has more time to handle more patients. I think these are all inflection points. We need to imagine and see what are all the innovations which are possible and satisfying the needs. And what also has happened is we've cut down waste, we've cut down cost, we've cut down excess of consumption right now. That's the whole situation. But yet we need to have the economy moving. So we must see what is required for people and satisfy those needs. Otherwise, we would have a situation of, people who are capable but don't have skills which can give them commercial value. I think that's our challenge, which we need to manage.
I think very simply articulated, I think the whole need of the customer and how do we adapt quickly. And that's where the innovation is coming in, Emmanuel. I think a good example that you came from your personal experience as well. But I would like to hear also from GV, because look, Byju's has been having a tremendous growth story. GV. I think they really kind of sense what's going on in the market and doing fantastic work around that. And you've been guiding them. What's happening there? I mean, what's something that we can learn from that experience? Or they innovating, evolving, adapting? I think they're doing everything, I believe.
Yeah, so a few things, right? So they're realizing clearly that there is an acceleration of adoption. And in the main thing, in my opinion, what's changed is not the fact that offline is shut, but the fact that schools have been pushed to use digital, significantly more than they were used to using. Now, suddenly, the questions on whether you can learn online or not have vanished because your school is adopting that. Now, parents have no more questions on whether children can learn, using a device or online, right? So that's also meant, significant demand for a Byju or an academy or, several of the edtech companies. And, obviously Byju himself understands that, look, there is an acceleration. There's probably a 2-3 year lead you've got in terms of, what would have taken that much longer has now happened quicker. So you've been gifted, kind of something that you should make use of the opportunity, right? So a few things, right? One, he realized that, look, this acceleration would also mean the adoption of synchronous learning would go up, right? So far they've been using videos and offline methodologies. They were not really pushing people to do anything online because the quality of bandwidth may be different. Providing guaranteed ability to keep connected and do a class, etc., was limited. But now, everyone is investing in, because all our children are kind of doing schooling from home. Everybody probably have upgraded their internet so that they can have better quality, education. So some of the infrastructure has gotten set up quite nicely through this period, which means now synchronous learning can happen. So one of the things that they did was they advanced their synchronous learning, which is online tutoring type model. Instead of launching it in August, September, which was the original plan, they started doing it free from April itself, right? So they kind of accelerated the rollout of that and had tens of thousands of people doing online classes on their platform because schools were shut. So that is one example. The second example is what they did with the purchase of White Hat Junior, which is a coding platform company that is doing really well. And they went and kind of, this is a make or buy decision for most things, but they understood that the market had accelerated, adoption of some of this had gone up. They saw a company that was executing really well and decided to, kind of, it's one of the top 10 acquisitions in the country, certainly the largest edtech exits so far, etc., etc. So some of that they did to get access to new markets and accelerate their progress towards this journey. And third is they've ensured that they had adequate capital to do this execution, not just in India but potentially globally. So they raised some large amounts of capital in the recent past. So in a way, you look at the opportunity and say, hey, look, I've been gifted with accelerated path. How do I make sure I make the most of it? So again, we talk about luck and serendipity and some of that, right? But when you're given the opportunity, what you make of it is equally important than just being lucky, right? And I would say use this as an example to say, they decided to make good use of the opportunity that was presented to them.
Yeah, I think that gives us a good insight about what's going on, but also seizing the opportunity, making it faster in terms of decisions, and going understanding the environment and making the changes happen fast. Fantastic insights, GV. Thank you. I'll go into the part which is also a little bit more in context. See, also when you look at from a leader's perspective nowadays, right? There is a lot of happening in the environment. There are good things and also there are difficult things. There are some questions which are being given. There are questions around productivity of the teams. There are questions around, there are difficult decisions around organizations, redundancies, layoffs. All those things are happening. Now, as a leader, who is responsible for the organization, customer, business, success, everything. Most of us are under tremendous pressure. So, and there are few who thrive. Some of them give up. How can leaders really thrive, and how can they make themselves more valuable to their organization that they are either founded or they are leading? So, how can they make it better during these times? How can they be more thriving in this context. Sushant, would you like to lead with this question? I mean, you've been, focusing on leadership development at Infosys. What are some of the insights from you?
Let me start with one of the simpler definitions I have around leadership. I've been asked, leaders are they born, are they made? How do you define leadership? Is it by structures, hierarchy, all of those things. I've found that the best way to define leadership is how you make somebody feel. If the person feels inspired to be led by you, then great. If the person feels assured in your competence, great. So it's about how you make people feel at any given point of time. So and I don't believe that a leader's attributes are going to change over time. You're in a bit of a crisis mode now. Some attributes will come to the fore. So the good old things around being values oriented, you need to have business acumen, be collaborative, all of that stays. But having said that, I would say that there are a few that come to the fore during these times. There is a part around the now, which is you're handling the pandemic, and then there is the next, when things start to stabilize. So as you traverse both the now and the next, there are a few key focus areas. One is empathy, optimism, and energy. Empathy is being genuine, and this I've seen make a significant difference. It's no longer asking in a meeting, so how are you doing? You have to take time, process, understand where that person is at. And if somebody says, about a month ago, I was in an external meeting and there were 4 of us, and somebody said, so how are things? And one of the responses we got was not actually good. And then the other person went on to say, okay, so the agenda for the meeting is, and I happened to hear that and asked, so what's happening? And the person said, look, I'm having a challenge. There is a worker come at the door for a COVID test and I need to step out for this. And we said, no problem, let's shut this down and begin. So you really need to process the information that you get, right? One of our board members used to say, if you have to be a successful leader, you need to have demonic energy and incorrigible optimism. And that is why I said, you need to have empathy, optimism, and energy. Optimism is keeping the faith that things will turn out to be good. You can't be the doom and gloom storyteller, right? And therefore, you need to build that optimism, which leads me to my second point, emotional resilience. You're in a situation where, as a leader, you're both the medium and the message, right? People are going to look at you, they're going to hear from you, they're going to watch you for all the cues. You have to be the shock absorber, and you have to send out positive signals, right? Otherwise, it's not going to work. You cannot be showing all the turbulence that yes, there is going to be quite a bit of turbulence. And that is why you have to be emotionally resilient. And then the part of emotional resilience also comes in when we speak about wellness, you have to start focusing on your own wellness. A lot of us think about others' wellness and saying, we give and advice to a lot of others. But this has to start with you, because when it starts with you, you will also start role modeling that to many others. The third would be authenticity and compassion. I saw a question in the chat asking me specifically saying, hey, how do you deal with people when people are being laid off and with morale, right? And I think the way to deal with it is authenticity and compassion. You have to be authentic in like the saying goes, you have to tell them what day it is. If it is a Monday and the weekend is far away, you have to say, hey, it's a Monday. But I get it that you think it's going to be a long haul, and therefore let's take some time, let's take a breather in. But you need to tell them when things are not going well. Because if you don't, what choice are you left with anyway? So don't let it come through as a betrayal. Be transparent, but at the same time be responsible. Don't compromise on psychological safety for people. Be compassionate in terms of understanding where their questions are coming from, and because you're impacting livelihoods, so you need to be coming through as that. When I think you would have seen the letters that Brian Chesky wrote when Airbnb shut down. What a wonderful letter. And you can see that he's put himself out there. It's an authentic and very compassionate letter. And he ends it by saying, I have failed, and he acknowledges that failure. It's the same action, but it's the manner in which the leader has communicated the message that made all the difference. The fourth is being decisive. And I think the panelists alluded to that. Earlier when we were chatting earlier, GB was also mentioning about how it's important not to keep this Damocles sword hanging all the time, right? You're making a decision, you have to cut something, cut and be done with it and tell them, hey, there are no more cuts. Make the decision. Now, I have to tell you, it's easy to say, make the decision. Sometimes you will say, let me wait for another month, things will get better, and then I might make that. That's okay, make the decision. Do not shroud procrastination with diligence, right? And say, I will postpone it. If it is time to be decisive, take that decision now. 1 month or 2 months later, new data will come back. It's okay. You go out and tell people, given this, I might roll back my decision. As long as you're being communicative and authentic, things will work for you. You have to think big picture and bring in perspective. Whether it's all your stakeholders are pretty much, information is not as much flowing other than through the WhatsApp universities and whatever little the media is saying. So they're going to look to you to gain information and, more importantly, perspective. If you're able to put that together, then as a leader, you can make a significant difference. And then you've got to contextualize it to your. So why am I recommending this? So this is how the world is. This is what I think it would be for you. And here is what I think you need to do. Your ability to do that, obviously, it would also mean that you have an understanding and you have business acumen that goes with this. Learnability and learning, that's quite self-explanatory. I'm not going to speak more to it. Digital competence. This is going to be one of the biggest differentiators. When I say digital competence, it's not just understanding or knowing what technology can do for you, but bringing it to bear and adapting and adopting it in your regular processes, institutionalizing it, embedding it in organizational processes. These are things that will drive a lot of things. And of course, more than ever before, collaboration is going to be very, very key. When I look back, I find that decision-making, empathy, energy, and emotional resilience are the ones that a lot of leaders find themselves challenged on. All the others they pick up, but these four, there's a lot of challenge. So I would say that's something that people have.
I think very well articulated. I think those the points which you gave in the beginning. I think that especially the point which you mentioned about demonic energy. I think that can make a hell of a difference. And hope, empathy, all those aspects. Fantastic articulation, Sushant. So what I've done during this period also is, I've been taking some notes and trying to summarize the gist of our discussion. And let me just share that at this point. Give me a second. So what I was trying to articulate, I think a lot of insights which has come in from, you spoke about the plasticity and elasticity, ability to adapt quickly in the beginning itself, the innovation part that was brought in by Emmy in terms of how do we really empathize with the customers, make quick changes. Sushant, you spoke about the whole work redesign and the whole organization redesign, which might be a combination of the technology plus the culture and the values that we need to bring in to make sure that the future of work is better and much better aligned to the organizational needs. I think the articulation around the leadership qualities, I think that was beautiful. I think what it's essentially spoke about is what we know, but we need to amplify certain behaviors at this point of time to ensure that the tough decisions that we make, how do we bring the people along in these times? And what I tried to look at is saying that there are two parts to it, right? One is a survivor mindset. The other is an explorer mindset. I think a combination of this can really help us in making it happen. So one is when you look at a survivor mindset, you're looking at being frugal, because these are times for us to conserve some of the resources, make sure that it takes us through the tough times. And an explorer mindset would be saying that, look, we need to probably also question the status quo. We need to question some of the assumptions. But tools like, people are asked about what are tools that we can use. I mean, there are tools like, scenario and planning, which you might use, but scenarios are changing. Maybe after 4 months, you might see a huge scenario change with, the vaccine coming out. There might be very different business opportunities, or the businesses that are muted now might be very different at that point of time. How do I prioritize? Now, should I prioritize my employees? Should I prioritize my team? Should I prioritize my partners? Should I prioritize my investors? All these questions are coming out in leaders' minds. So where do I prioritize? Seizing the opportunities which are there, innovation and experimentation which we can do. Even if the odds are not in favor, can I go ahead? Can I make things happen? Same time, communication, because a lot of things which are happening, how do I give that positive communication? How do I bring hope to the people? How do I ensure that there is a trust and authenticity that is building in the organization? So those things become very important at this point of time, which you mentioned about leadership aspects. So in essence, also the environment scanning and the big picture. Are you able to understand, what can happen to me and my business in 6 months or 1 year down the line? And how can I scan constantly in terms of the opportunities? Because if you see right now, what you might have taken a lot of decisions in a haste, but how are they going to play out in the next 6 months, 1 year? So a lot of things can happen, but having that big picture can help. Now, also, I think the point that we mentioned in terms of our own health and wellness, because we have to sail through these things. How do I ensure that I keep my mental wellness and my physical wellness in the prime? Because that is going to help a lot of these startup founders, the leaders, CEOs, all of us, managers, and the team members in to thrive in this situation. I think that's the key in terms of making all this survivor mindset or explorer mindset. If you need to be an explorer or a survivor, we need to ensure that we keep ourselves in that prime. So good insights, great insights from all of us. And thank you, GV, for your insights, Manuel David, Mr. Sushant Tharappan. I think we really enjoyed this discussion. I personally really enjoyed. And participants, I think there are questions. I think all of them got addressed during this period of time. We'll be sharing the recording of this. I think we were also live on YouTube and also live on LinkedIn and Facebook. So that also would have given an audience from there as well. Thank you for joining through those media as well. So once again, thank you on behalf of People Business and the Great Manager program and the webinar series that we are associated with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeep.
Sandeep.
Very well summed up, Sandeep, in real time. I must compliment you for doing that.
Done.
Very well done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Manuel. Thank you, Shashank.
Insights.
Thank you. Thank you,
Nice
GV.
to know
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.